My name is Rob Hart. I am the author of The Warehouse, which is coming out on August 20th. It is a near-future sort of speculative dystopian thriller kind of thing, and it's about what if one company that is not based on any real company whatsoever completely took over the online retail economy and just completely dominated the United States economy. So I'll tell you about how I outline, because this is my favorite thing that I do, and I tell people about this, and they're like, that's pretty cool. I'm an outrageous outliner. Like, I really need to, like, have something in front of me in order to do it. Like, I can't just write by the seat of my pants. And so I write the outline, and then I toss it. And then 2-3 days later, I write the outline again. And I'll do that as many times as I feel like is necessary. And the idea is that you remember all the good stuff. All the stuff you're excited about, it stays there. All the wonky stuff that's not really working, you forget. And in the meantime, you have time to sort of think about the connective tissue. It's like the gift of forgetting of like the stuff that is just not working. It also, I think, is helpful because it sort of instills in you that idea that like nothing is precious. You know, sometimes the story has to win and you have to kill your darlings, you have to lose the things that you love. So it's almost cathartic sometimes to be like, you know, I spent 2 hours on this, now I'm just going to get rid of it. And it'll come back. Because again, like the stuff that you're excited about, you're not going to forget those things. I'm in the process of pitching my next book to my editor. I did like a 12-page outline for the new one, which is the most I've ever written for an outline. But generally, I try to keep it simple, like sort of like a character list and like roughing out what their arc is going to be. And then sort of like a chapter by chapter, like, you know, this happens and this is the cliffhanger into the next chapter, and then on and on and on. It sort of grows and changes, and like sometimes I'll get manic and start color coding things like the character names and stuff like that so I can see like what the flow is like. But I envy people who can just sit and write. But, you know, everyone's process is different. That's the funny thing about writing is that I hate writing advice. In particular, when someone tells you an absolute. Like when people say you have to write every day. This is the worst piece of writing advice I've ever heard. I can't write every day. I have a 4-year-old. She won't let me. But I'm doing okay. I get my work done. So it's a matter of, you know, kind of picking through what works for you and what doesn't, and being able to recognize that some stuff is just never going to work for you. I did a book shot, a novella with James Patterson called Scott Free. And I got the single best piece of writing advice I ever got from him, from his notes, which was I had these two characters, and one of them sort of like launches himself into the other. And I compared it to like getting hit with a cannonball. And he's like, no one knows what that feels like. You need to use analogies that people understand. That is the best thing I've ever heard. I can't believe I've never thought of that. For every project that I'm working on, even if it's kind of a stray idea, I create a new Google Doc, and that becomes like a repository. For example, with The Warehouse, I first came up with the idea in 2012, and I didn't really start writing it in earnest until 2016. So those 4 years in between was like, you know, I would see a news story that kind of applied, and I would dump it in there. Or I would think like, oh, here's a cool little idea that maybe I could work in, and I would dump it in there. I have tons of Google Docs, some of which I don't understand anymore. I'll look at them and be like, I don't even remember what this idea was. But it's just a place to kind of hold everything until I'm ready. And then, yeah, it's just, for me, it's just all Microsoft Word after that. I am sort of blown away by Wanderers by Chuck Wendig. It's like magic because it's over 800 pages. I read it in 3 days. And he took every single thing on Twitter that makes you anxious and keeps you up at night and somehow formed them into a coherent narrative. The way that he sort of like creates this huge mosaic of like these really cool characters and this story that's really thrilling and really pulls you through it. And it's just like completely unlike anything I've ever read before. It's one of those books that I read and I'm like, I'm a little jealous. That's my favorite standard is when I see a movie or I watch a show. Fleabag is another good example. Fleabag is the kind of show that it's like, I need to be a better writer because the bar just got raised. Because it is so absurdly good. The Good Place is another good example of that. That also, I feel like, is almost like a little like mini craft session on writing because the episodes are sort of self-contained and they always end on these incredible cliffhangers where it almost feels like they're completely like throwing out the rule book. And it's like, I don't even know how they're going to keep the show going. Like, how do you do that? It's also just this really beautiful show about humanity and morality. That's something that I'm really interested in right now is those sort of like very deeply human stories. It's really easy to tell a surface story, but to kind of push past that into something that's a little bit more complicated and something that's a little bit more truthful, I'm always on the lookout for stuff like that. The website is robwhart.com, Twitter, robwhart, Instagram, robwhart1, because apparently someone got to that before me. And then The Warehouse comes out on August 20th, and after that, I've got a comic book thing that could be coming up soon that I can't really talk about yet, and I'm really excited about, but hopefully there'll be more news to share on that soon.